Parliamentarians from various African nations will today vote for the new administration of the Pan-African Parliament in Midrand. AU Commission Chair Moussa Faki Mahamat has pleaded with delegates to give the Southern and North African regions a chance to lead the institution. These are the only two regions that haven't had a chance to lead since it started in 2004. For analysis, I'm joined now by Associate Professor of International Relations and Political Science at the University of Johannesburg, Dr. David Monyae. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. A lot of contention and perhaps disagreements on a gentleman's agreement. Talk to us about your analysis of these elections.
I think the situation has been going on for a while. These are some of the teething challenges that the AU's Pan-African Parliament, a really important institution to safeguard good governance on the continent. However, I think the challenges to come with misalignment in terms of what is it that is good for the continent and what is good for individual members of parliament. And the last 2, 3, 5 years, it appears that issues concerning individual members of parliament is taking much more priority, undermining the interests of the entire continent. And one hopes that today's voting will go smoothly and they will realign and stick to what the AU really wants to do.
What impact do you imagine this will have on the SADC group? I mean, one group is calling for Malawi, vying for the presidency position and, of course, not the preferred candidate. And then the other group is speaking of Zimbabwe, which has been deputizing the position.
I think at the end of the day, they might not resolve. These are minor issues and very ambitious individual. I think the member from Malawi will really be defeated on the ballot box. It appears that North Africa and the majority of the rest of members from other regions will go with perhaps the preferred candidate by SADC. And chances of a Malawian winning is very limited, but you never know. In an institution that seem to be really out of order. I think that's an institution that has left core issues that are affecting the continent. I think we have conflicts. We have endless coups happening in West Africa. We have climate change crisis. A bulk of our youth are dying in the Mediterranean, and there's the pictures we've seen. Some members of the very same parliament, Morocco and Algeria, really abusing young people who are fleeing the continent. We shouldn't be in a situation where our own youth wants to abandon our own continent. And therefore, this is an issue that should concentrate members of parliament to ensure that their governments speak with one voice on issues of both continental and global concern.
Let's talk perhaps about the importance of this body being united and the, I mean, you've made mention now of some of the challenges that exist around the continent, but as we have, been in the midst of COVID-19, around the economies of the different continents, the countries within the continent not doing so well, how important will the leadership of this Pan-African Parliament be in terms of steering the continent forward?
Indeed. I think this just reinforces the fact that the crisis issues, the side issues, the real issues will be the African continental free trade issues, our trade with China, our trade with the European Union, United States, ensuring that the continent speak with one voice when it comes to matters of Ukraine. I think the last 2 UN General Assembly votes, we saw the continent divided. I think you really need to ensure that the kind of members that are elected to represent the Pan-African or represent their countries are people of highest standing in terms of their own anti-corruption issues. What we have seen is that some members are more interested in their own money that they get in traveling and shopping incented. I think those kind of issues need to be really, really looked into and ensure that Pan-African Parliament continues to earn trust from Africans and ensure that their governments follow what is core to the interests of the continent.
In earning trust and serving the interests of the continent, today is a really important day when it comes to the voting process. We know that in May of 2021, the PAP session was aborted because of the disruptions to proceedings and the demands for the implementation of the rotation principle when electing new leaders. How important, or perhaps how much significance, should the principle of rotation bear on the entire voting process?
I think this is an important system that they use. I think it goes as far back as 1963 when then the OAU was established. For some of the senior members of the then OAU and now AU, the understanding was that the chairship of this important body needs to rotate across the continent to ensure that we all, we as Africans, on this process, Southern Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, North Africa, Maghreb, and West Africa have a fair share. And it's not just a question of geographical representation. We also need to look into issues such as gender representation and a number of other factors that really gives the continent what it needs to deal with issues that we confront domestically. Ironically, last year we had ESCOM load shedding, and today, here we come again.
Yeah.
It's ESCOM load shedding. So this speaks to poor governance. I think that members of parliament need to speak, not just against South Africa, but the entire continent. We should be producing enough energy that we share to beef up our economies and take most of our people out of poverty.
Absolutely. The ESCOM matter and the power issue that's happening as you and I speak, how do you imagine it to affect the entire process, and perhaps also give us an idea of how the process plays out within the voting of the, I understand around 47 representatives out of the African states will be casting their vote?
But one hopes that the administrators of Pan-African Parliament have made clear plans, either using solar or generator, alternative energy in terms of ensuring that if there's load shedding in Midrand, which we just had, I speak from Midrand, it does not disrupt this important event, such as the elections and vital issues discussed today.
So when it comes to the actual bodies and the voting process, how does it normally play out? How have we seen it in terms of process and structure in the other years?
The African Parliament does not differ. I mean, our understanding of our own national parliament, it's operating more or less the same, with presiding officers that are going to run the process and understand and discuss, debate issues, and reach a stage in which they will cast their votes. And then a candidate that receives more votes will then confirmed with the endorsement from the headquarters in Addis Ababa, the AU. The AU Parliament itself seeks autonomy from the mother body to ensure that they can hold head of states accountable, ideally. But as it stands, head of states appear to have more powers, and most of these members of parliament, when they come, they really do not speak on issues concerning their countries, such as refugee crisis, They don't really scrutinize their own governments because of the nature and character of our politics on the continent. And therefore, that's the reason why there is a need for the African Parliament to be autonomous. However, it appears that they are using that independence, autonomous, for wrong reasons, which are much more personal fulfillment instead of the continental interest.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Associate Professor of International Relations and Political Science at the University of Johannesburg, Dr. David Monyae.